Comrades, happy birthday to Karl Marx. If we believed in an afterlife, which we don't, I'm sure he'd be looking and shining down on us and, wishing this meeting and all the other meetings around the world that are events around the world that are celebrating his 200th birthday. Good luck, but most importantly, do something, because the idea is not just to talk about things, but to change them. Greg said something that is really, really important, and I don't think that we appreciate it enough. If we did, it would have more of an impact on our work, I think. Arguably, socialism has never been more popular today than at any time in human history. That's what I'm not saying it's not debatable, but that's what some people think. And capitalism has never been more unpopular. This is good news. This is good news for all who dream about and work toward socialist revolution. But in order to realize the potential in this, comrades, we must confront some ideological problems. They're not problems you can blame this or that leader or this or that party or even this or that event on. They're more general than that. What evokes thinking about what I'm talking about is what Karl Marx called for. He didn't call for reform. He called for revolution. He believed that capitalism could not be reformed. He believed that capitalism was not only inherently oppressive and based on exploitation of labor and terrible and pauperized the workers and even more the oppressed, but that the system was inherently unstable, even though it might go through periods where it seemed to be stable, especially to ordinary workers. Sooner or later, that would come to an end, and the instability would come back with a vengeance. So what happened? I think we ought to sharpen our view of the better part of the last 3/4 of a century of the development of Marxism, not only in this country, but around the world to a certain extent, with some exceptions. That is the development of revolutionary Marxism. It's been problematic. It's reached some barriers, some walls that it has not been able to overcome yet, but that's temporary. With our help and millions of other revolutionaries, we'll get over those barriers. What am I talking about? After US imperialism gained world dominance about 3/4 of a century ago when it came out victorious in the Second Imperialist War and sort of ran things in all sorts of global networks and institutions and projects and thinking that are all under attack now because of the crisis, came into play. In the working class movement, in a general way, there was a reassessment of the situation. It's not that everybody came together and reassessed it. It was more abstract and uneven than that. But it's nonetheless true, again, with some exceptions. The general thinking in the working class movement was that now with US imperialism so dominant, that capitalism was probably going to be around indefinitely. And that probably we'd be dealing with a system that appeared to be stable. And so what we were fighting for would be affected by that. What happened is that the struggle for revolution kind of abated. And the struggle for reforms, which from a revolutionary point of view, is just a strategy towards the struggle for revolution. We're not against the struggle for reforms, for demands, immediate demands. We're all for that. But that abated and became predominant. And the struggle for reforms became an end in and of itself. Then, eventually, as we could have told anybody, it became clear that capitalism had sunk into a deeper crisis. Globalization, technology, austerity, some call it neoliberalism. That's just another word for saying a violent phase of unstable capitalism. All the attacks that brought with it, union busting, more racism, more sexism, more oppression. See? When that happened, because of the orientation of a large section of the working class, including forces that considered themselves socialists and communists, they didn't know what to do because their work and their perspective had been based on, to a larger degree, the stability of capitalism. But all of a sudden, they didn't have that anymore. We have to talk about this a lot more, but not just talk about it as if we're polemicizing with somebody. There's a point to that, but that runs out of purpose. We have to try to do something to change this perspective. Our struggle, and it's been our struggle for a long time, is to try to reset the working class movement, however long it takes. And whatever needs to be done to do this, we have to work hard as revolutionaries to reset what the main objective is. Fighting for demands is great. All of the tremendous struggles that have taken place over the period of time that I'm talking about, you can't take anything away from them. They've been valiant, they've been brave. But we've got to put revolution back into the equation because that's what's necessary. Our program cannot be limited to immediate economic demands. It has to be more revolutionary. It has to address political demands, like stopping imperialist war, like supporting the struggle of the oppressed, supporting Black Lives Matter. That's a working class issue. That's not some marginal issue. Supporting the struggle for women's liberation, the struggle for the liberation of LGBT and Q people. These are not marginal struggles on the side. They are at the center of the working class, the struggle of immigrants. There are some in our movement who say that these are diversions, that they're not really working class, and even worse things. Some of them say that they're the reason that Trump got elected. We must argue with them. We cannot tolerate this kind of thinking because it's wrong and it's disuniting. These are working class struggles. Marx's view of the working class was for everyone to come in, all the issues, all the struggles to come in, not to be pushed to the side. This one is important, that one's not. Oh, we can wait with this one. No, that's not a revolutionary view, and it's not a Marxist view. Marx's view was that the working class got bigger, not smaller. Not only because of the legions of oppressed people who joined it. You can no longer say that Marx is Eurocentric. It's mostly the oppressed of the world, not only in Asia and in Africa and in Latin America and the Middle East, but right here and in other imperialist centers. You look at the demographics. Why do you think, so many racists and the bourgeoisie are flipping out? Because the oppressed are taking over. Right on. Time for it. Another thing. Capitalist crisis forces other social elements into the working class, not the other way. People who thought they were going to be petty bourgeois or even bourgeois are forced into the working class. A lot of the fairly educated young people that we run into, not only in our life, but in the political movement, they might have had some big ideas about what they were going to do with their education. Now they can't pay the loans and they're forced to be in the gig economy. I think somebody's going to talk about that, to take all sorts of precarious kinds of jobs with no security, and most of them don't last. And that's why people have to constantly, be leaving and getting new apartments. And these are people with degrees, 2 or 3 degrees. These are our comrades, or at least potentially our comrades, and very much a part of the working class. And we need to make something clear, because I hear it, Anytime some of the young people who sort of fit this description get together and they're becoming radicalized, they look at each other sometimes and they say, we got to get to the workers. You know, you are the workers. Yes, you need to get to other sectors of the working class that are more oppressed because they are in need of your solidarity. But you are workers. You are not some middle-class abstraction that no one has denied. So stop looking at each other and wondering what you are. You're the working class, and I'll tell you what, the revolution needs you. It needs what you know. And it's a big plus on the side of the working class that we have you. We have to begin to overturn the narrow conceptions of how workers are organized. Conventional trade unionism is, and that means business trade unionism, if you don't know what I'm talking about. That means, well, we'll organize workers if we feel that they can win recognition and get a contract and be able to negotiate, you know, the terms of their exploitation. And if they can't do that, then we don't know what to do with them. This is the main reason why one of the unions, several of the unions, after a while, I don't know if they were really serious, that's debatable, gave up trying to organize fast food workers. Because the argument was, you can't organize McDonald's for all sorts of reasons. You'll never get recognition. They gave all the excuses, and say, oh, we're throwing money, we're throwing good money after bad money, and so they gave up. See, that is very dangerous, because from a revolutionary Marxist perspective, if you don't organize as many workers as you can under whatever circumstances that they're toiling under, then you make it easier for the system to pit workers against each other. There's something we can learn from the teachers who are striking in Arizona and in Colorado and in other places, and I think they're planning on going out in North Carolina. This is revolutionary. I don't know whether everybody gets this. These teachers are fighting, I shouldn't call it, they're education workers. You know, put aside teachers. And it's not just teachers. It's actually people who are doing all sorts of work. They're education workers. They are fighting in so-called right-to-work states, anti-worker, anti-union states. They are not recognized by the government. Their strike, according to bourgeois law, is illegal, which means that it's a rebellion, that tens and thousands of them are saying to hell with it. They could get fired. They could get fired, but still they're walking out. It's a message to every worker everywhere. Regardless of your circumstances, regardless of the laws in your state, you can organize if there are those revolutionaries and progressives and militants like ourselves who understand that and who will help you any way that we can. And that's the big challenge for us. We need what one might call real internationalism. It's okay when there's a struggle somewhere. There's a big struggle going on in France. Very important. Very important. I'm not going to go into it, but it's basically the workers, again, rising up and fighting against what the bourgeoisie there has been trying to do for several generations, and that's take back all of the gains of the workers so it can be more competitive. The problem is the other workers in Europe should be standing with them. And actually, it should be more than just a European struggle. It should be a worldwide struggle. Because why? If the bourgeoisie is victorious there, then they'll try it in Detroit, which they already did, and in Puerto Rico. We need to have a new revolutionary scope of our struggle. That it's really a global class struggle. I'm winding up here, but I know that reading things, well, you know, that's a tricky road to go down. But I really need to read this paragraph from the Communist Manifesto, written by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels about 170 years ago. And it's about the scope of the class struggle. Now and then, the workers are victorious, but only for a time. The real fruits of their battles lie not in the immediate results, but in the ever-expanding union of the workers. This union is helped on by the improved means of communication that are created by modern industry and that place the workers of different localities in contact with one another. It is just this contact that is needed to centralize the numerous local struggles, all of the same character, into one struggle. I think Marx was thinking about social media. I think what he just did here was give you a Marxist analysis of social media. It's communications technology that has made it easier. The bourgeoisie uses it for its purposes. The working class uses it for its purposes. Now, you can contemplate the unimaginable possibility of a global strike. It's going to happen one day. Finally, our biggest danger. I think Comrade Gregg already touched on this, and this is it. Capitalism throws workers into violent competition with each other. And in a crisis, this competition is exacerbated. It gets worse. It's only when the struggle reaches a certain momentum that it changes that problem, that phenomena, and solidarity becomes strong. Solidarity has a lot of gravity, and the workers come together. This is where the danger of Trump comes in. We can say a lot about Trump. As bad and as dangerous as Trump is, actually it's a sign that the system is falling apart. It's a sign of desperation. However, let us not forget what Trump's about, primarily. He's about smashing the working class. He's about dividing the workers from the most oppressed sections of the working class. And I want to say to you, this is not a criticism, this is an observation, and it's generalized, not for our party, but for everybody. All struggles are important. The teachers' struggle, everything that's going on, the strike of the spectrum workers. There's so many strikes. But I'll tell you something. If we understood what Marx was about, we probably would have tried to do more in solidarity with these immigrant workers that came to this country in a caravan recently, whom Trump has been attacking and attacking and attacking for weeks, for whom he sent troops down there, and more cops, and more judges, and more of the state apparatus to repress. See? I'm not saying that the reason why we need to, zero in on solidarity with immigrant workers is because their plight is necessarily worse or greater than other workers in another part of the world, or that it's a moral question. No, that's not it at all. What I'm saying is that if we get what the ruling class is up to, if we really understand how they want to keep the working class chained, then we would know that it was time to find a way to solidarize ourselves with these migrant workers. But it's just one thing. Fortunately, we're going to have another opportunity to do that. As a matter of fact, many opportunities. And I hope Workers' World and all of our allies, communists and socialists, or whatever you characterize yourself, those who want revolution, those who want to help the working class and lift it up, and those who want to go beyond just the demands. Yes, fight the demands, but see something else at the end of the tunnel called socialist revolution. Let us work harder. Let us work harder. Let us use Marx's 200th birthday to inspire us to do that.